Want to cross to Britain, though, and catch up with a couple of astonishing stories there. We'll speak with British broadcaster Dominique Samuels, who joins us live from London each week. Good to talk to you again, Dominique. A couple of stories I'm struggling to get my head around. Let's start with the one that you've brought a lot of public attention to, and that's the media treatment of a so-called ISIS bride in Britain. Her name is Shamima Begum, and who went to Syria at the age of 15. Now, we've had ISIS brides and others returning to Australia as well, so we know the tension that creates in the community. What don't you like about the way that Shamima is being treated?
I mean, what I don't like is the obvious, to be honest, to most people with half a brain cell. It's that this girl went and joined a terrorist death cult, responsible for untold misery, death and destruction. And here she is being presented on the front of a Sunday Times magazine cover as if she's some sort of celebrity. I mean, you could see it there, the confessions of Shamima Begum being given a podcast on BBC News. And I mean, it's no wonder Britain is turning into a laughingstock globally. It's no wonder our borders are perpetually invaded when it's clear we don't even respect ourselves. You can go off and join ISIS and then be rewarded with a glossy magazine cover afterwards as if you're some sort of celebrity and not a reprehensible human being. It's completely insane to me.
These are people who literally were fighting against our countries and against Western values and against everything we stand for, and they've come back into our country. We haven't had any deified in the media the way you're pointing to there. Now, obviously, it's useful, though, for us to hear their stories, especially if they're repentant about what's gone on. But there's some sort of line there to be drawn, isn't there, between hearing their stories and giving them a podcast on the BBC?
Exactly. That is the difference. I mean, we can debate all day long about whether Shamima Begum should come back to the UK, about whether, she was groomed, even though after the fact she expressed no real remorse. And she said that the Manchester Arena terrorist bombing that killed children as young as 11 was basically fair game. We could have a debate about that, even though really in the past she hadn't really expressed any remorse. But just in terms of morality and what's appropriate, it's obviously inappropriate to have her on the front of magazines, and it's obviously inappropriate to be giving her podcasts. And the BBC should really look in the mirror, because it seems nowadays, over the last few years actually, they seem more interested in promoting people like that than focusing on the real stories that actually are happening in Britain and the people that are being affected.
All right, let me go on to another crazy story that's come out of Prince Harry's book, The Spare, where he felt obliged to tell the world about the night he lost his virginity as a 16 or 17-year-old at the back of a pub with someone he described as an older woman. Turns out she was a couple of years older than him and actually is younger than his current wife.
There's something really distasteful about this. Perhaps it's the way Harry remembers things, as the palace said, recollections may vary. Recollections certainly varied in this case. He made out in his memoir that this was an older woman that used him, treated him like a young stallion. But it turns out, according to this lady that's come out and said, I am the older woman, number one, she's 2 years older than him. Number two, they were actually friends. And number three, you could even argue that she was the vulnerable one and not him, because she said that he attempted to comfort her with tequila shots when she saw that her ex-boyfriend had walked into the pub where she was celebrating her birthday with another woman. I don't think it's made Harry look very good, actually. I think it's made him look like a liar again. But it also sounds like he sort of took advantage of a vulnerable girl and then never texted her again, even on a birthday, which I think is a pretty low-down thing to do.
The extraordinary thing here, though, is that she's now out there public. He put this into the public arena. Her name is Sasha Walpole, and she's saying, well, she's basically kept stum about this the whole time. She's been sensible and private about it. Could have sold this story to the media any time, I guess. But it's Harry's book that has forced this story out into the public. Here's a little bit of what she's had to say.
I didn't know Harry was a virgin at the time. It wasn't until probably the next morning when I actually thought about it. I was a bit, oh no, not because of him being a prince. It was just the fact that I'd slept with one of my friends and it was Harry. And but then it kind of dawned on me that perhaps he was, because obviously he'd never really had a girlfriend, I suppose, that I knew of back then. you know, it was just a quickie in the field.
Yeah, well, I hope she got a quid for it now, Dominique, because as I say, she's the one who's had this forced into the public arena.
Exactly. I mean, it's not fair. And obviously reading the memoir, the people that they knew, the people around them would be reading that. And obviously they weren't there in the field. So they'd be thinking, wait a minute, you took advantage of Prince Harry? I think what it really says to me is that I think he was silly and abused a position of power that he probably shouldn't have. And for him to include it in the memoir, I mean, I don't know. The thing with Harry is he seems to interpret things where he is always actually the victim. And then when you actually speak to the other people involved in the story, it turns out Harry actually wasn't the victim. Maybe he remembered it like that to make Meghan happy. Who knows? Maybe
he should just not write in a book about when he lost his virginity. We don't need to know that. It's not a part of his life he needs to share with people. He's just doing that sort of nonsense to make a buck, and it's pretty ugly. Thanks for joining us, Dominique. I'll catch up next week.